morning. It is Wednesday, September 9th, and welcome to The Advantage, where we will take you through the latest in political ads and spending. I'm Rachel Haskins.
And I'm Ben Tabor. What's going on, guys? So today we're going to be covering the Senate race, which is very important and very much a close race this year for control of the Senate, and obviously very important. No matter who wins the presidency, they're going to need the Senate to pass their agenda. So the Senate has even more probably power this year than we would expect it to have in normal years. So kind of just to set the stage, right now there are 23 Republican-held seats up this year and 12 Democratic-held seats. So the Dems are kind of inherently on the advantage. They're kind of leading nationally in the polls, and the Republicans have a lot of seats up for grabs. So the Democrats have a pretty good opportunity this year to probably pick up some seats in the Senate. Right now, our friends over at Cook Political Report have 6 races listed as toss-ups: Colorado, Georgia, the Purdue, Georgia seat, Iowa, Maine, Montana, and North Carolina. They also have 2 seats that are currently held by the opposite party, leaning in the other direction. Though they have Arizona, which is currently held by McSally, leaning D, and they have Alabama, held by Doug Jones, leaning R. So kind of what do you make of the stage right now, the battlegrounds in the Senate?
Well, I think the important thing, as you noted, is there are a lot of Republican-held seats up for grab this year. So Democrats have really gone on the offensive. We've seen $1.1 billion spent in total on Senate races so far. Of that money, a significant chunk of it has been spent in these toss-up states.
Yep.
Those are the 6 where there are a lot of eyes on. Democrats feel like they have an opportunity to pick up. Republicans are really playing some hard defense in those states. And I mean, the money, as we've seen across the board in this election season, is just pouring in.
Yeah, just for a little bit of context, $1.14 billion is how much has been spent in the Senate so far this year. That's already about $100 million more than was spent in all of the 2018 cycle for Senate races, and we're only in September. Now, some of that money is booked through Election Day, but the Senate has really taken on a great air of importance this year. You know, there is some speculation that the presidential race might kind of take up all the political oxygen, but that really doesn't seem to be the case at all right now.
No. So we've really seen a lot of attention paid to particularly these 6 races, but the Senate across the board is getting a lot of attention. 16 ads alone went up yesterday, new ads targeting Senate races, so it's definitely not far from the spotlight, especially when we talk about actual dollars. I want to take a look at North Carolina because there has been so much money spent up and down the ballot in North Carolina, but particularly in the Senate race.
Yeah, absolutely. So right now in the North Carolina Senate race, there's been just under $200 million total spent so far, which is pretty outrageous for the first week of September. So overall, that kind of breaks out to $111 million on the Democratic side and $78 million on the Republican side. Probably the biggest takeaway here is that Democratic issue groups have spent $90 million in North Carolina for the Senate race alone this year.
That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money. So that's our analysis, folks. That's a lot of money. Would they be better off? Why are they putting so much money into North Carolina? Would some of that money be better off going to Colorado and defending Michigan and maybe defending Alabama? What's the thought process for putting so much money into North Carolina, especially in a state where you've got a gubernatorial race, it's a competitive presidential state. You've got a lot of money up and down the ticket there. You've got a lot of kind of ambient messaging from groups on your side.
Right. Well, the first question I'll ask in counter to that is, what's the polling doing in North Carolina?
It's pretty close. Everything I've seen has Cunningham up maybe 1 or 2 points, but it all seems to be within the margin of error.
That makes sense. I obviously cannot speak for these issue groups and why they're spending the way they are. There are really 2 options, though, right, that Democrats can choose from right now. Either they spread the money out and they try to shore up some of those seats. They try to support Doug Jones in Alabama rather than, leaving him defend for himself. They try to shore up seats in Colorado and Michigan, like you said. Or they focus on places where they really think there's a chance to flip the seat. The important thing with that option is that in 2016, states didn't split the ticket between president and Senate. So in a lot of ways, this is a gamble because you're betting that Joe Biden is going to win North Carolina and help sweep the rest of the ballot into office. That's a big bet.
Yeah, for those that don't know, Rachel's referencing the fact that no state in 2016 split their Senate and presidential voting at the national level. So, and North Carolina is maybe the most closely contested seat right now at the presidential level as well.
Right.
Biden's maybe up half a point in a lot of the polling that I'm seeing right now. So, it really is really close. And, this money can tip it one way or the other. It could tip the presidential and Senate balance of both of those in one seat.
Right. How's Republican spending in some of these other seats? How's Republican spending in Alabama? Alabama's a big story this year.
Well, so looking at Alabama, the Democrats don't really seem to be defending it. There's no outside money going into it. Right now, there's been about $6 million spent for candidate money on both sides, so that's $6 million of Republican candidate money, $6 million of Democratic candidate money, but Republican outside groups have put in about $8 million, and we've seen nothing on the Democratic side. So it seems like that's probably going to be a way up.
They have a spending advantage, and also Doug Jones is going up against a former Auburn football coach, and if it wasn't already a very red state, that would be a tough ticket to beat.
Absolutely. I mean, he had a bit of a perfect storm in 2017 to even get the seat, and I wouldn't really anticipate that continuing. So kind of looking at kind of the second tier of, not second tier, but some of the other top spending seats. We've got Iowa, we've got Arizona, we've got Maine, we've got Montana. The poor people of Montana are probably seeing more dollars per resident than any other state in the country. So in all of those, there's kind of a trend where Democratic candidates have outspent their counterparts, and the issue group money is pretty much even. So the Democratic candidates seem to be fundraising tremendously well this year, up and down the ballot.
And I think we've seen that echoed at the presidential level too. And of course, with the advent of Win Red, it's been a lot easier for Republicans to fundraise in the manner that Democrats do with Act Blue. But Act Blue is really established, and I think Democratic voters in particular right now are voting against Trump as much as they are for their own candidates, and he's such an energizing figure on both sides. I mean, he energizes his base in a way that we've not seen politicians do in a very long time, and he energizes Democrats to get out the vote and, help sweep other Democrats into office. So it doesn't surprise me terribly that Democratic candidates are fundraising the way that they are and spending the way that they are. But again, that's not the only money that counts. And if GOP issue groups are also helping shore up their candidates, I think we're going to continue to see really, really tight polling, tight races, and I mean, we're still on track to hit that, $7-8 billion in political spending. It's just going to be a monster year for political ad dollars.
So kind of as a closing question for me here, are there any kind of sleeper races that you're keeping an eye on that might not be kind of at the top of people's minds, but that could potentially come into play?
Honestly, I'm going to flip that on you because you're the congressional whiz kid over here, the senatorial whiz kid, and you know the polling like nobody else does, so I want your take on that one.
All right, the race that I'm currently keeping an eye on right now is actually Minnesota, which is super dark horse seat right here. The polling all seems to be pretty good for Tina Smith there. But I can't get out of my head that no state split their Senate and presidential vote in 2016. And that's a state that Donald Trump, their campaign is putting a lot of effort in, a lot of resources into. That's a state that potentially could play well for them. If they flip that seat, maybe there's a shocker on election night and she could lose. That's something that maybe to potentially keep an eye on. Super long shot, obviously, but that's kind of the most under the radar race that I'm keeping an eye on right now.
Well, in Minnesota, actually, to veer out of Senate territory for a little while, Minnesota has not gone for a Republican candidate since Nixon, 50 years or so, 50 plus. And Dr. Biden's actually in the state, I think today, campaigning. So it's definitely a state to watch from top to the bottom of the ticket. And I think we might have some surprises coming out of Minnesota.
Absolutely. That'd be really interesting to keep an eye on, especially if, if President Trump wins it, then a lot of the maps that people are envisioning could be very different.
Very different. So before we go, we're just going to pop up a graphic that shows you all what we've been talking about. Here you can see some of the toss-up states, some of the more competitive states. We've broken out the spending by issue group and by candidate spending for each party in respective Senate races. If you have any questions about what is listed here, you can reach out to Ben at the address listed below. And as always, we'll continue tracking all of this. And for more information, you can always follow us on Twitter.
Have a good week.